At some point, we've all been in a situation where we felt embarrassed or humiliated or ashamed. Maybe you had an ugly falling out with a friend and all of your mutuals took their side. Maybe you said something offensive and immediately realized how stupid it was to say. Maybe you sent a super embarrassing email at work that was meant for your boyfriend. Believe it or not, the best way to respond when something embarrassing happens is quite often counterintuitive. So if you're currently struggling with something like this, I want to help you get through this, and I'm going to be using Michael Scott as the example. Let's first talk about the case of Michael Scott. In season 1 of The Office, Michael Scott was not a very likable character. He was offensive and emotionally immature.
I want you to treat other people like the race that is on their forehead. Come on, Olympics of suffering right here. Slavery versus the Holocaust. Come on.
Who am I supposed to be?
It's gonna percolate. No. Well, that was inadvertent.
But by season 2, the writers of The Office realized that the show wasn't going to hook people long term if they couldn't root for the arguably main character. I don't know, you could kind of make a case for Jim being the main character too, but whatever, no one likes Jim. So the writers tried to make Michael Scott more sympathetic. They preserved his lack of self-awareness, but they highlighted also his deep need for connection underneath it.
Pam, we should probably get going and see the damage.
Oh, okay.
Well, you don't need two of you to do that.
That's true. Dinner sounded delicious. Pam, I'll see you at home. Thank you so much.
They displayed his loyalty, his forgiving nature, how he was kind of sweet when it came down to it. Like his relationship with Holly, we got to see how once he received the love that he always wanted, he was not as emotionally immature anymore. He was much more regulated.
Want to go out?
And pretty quickly, he grew on the audience. Because yeah, he was cringe and annoying at times, maybe even most times, but in an almost like childlike way where you have to kind of find it endearing. And plus, he made people laugh, and that was huge, because if you can make a person laugh, you're instilling positive emotions in them, and they're gonna find it a lot harder to dislike you. Notice what Michael Scott didn't do. He didn't make this grand statement and start talking about how, like moving forward, I'm going to be a less offensive person. He simply showed the audience a different side of him. He started to show up differently. He was still himself, but just a little bit more vulnerable. Can we take a page out of Michael Scott's book? If you've done something embarrassing or humiliated yourself somehow, your knee-jerk reaction is probably to burrow yourself into the ground and never show your face to the world again, or apologize over and over again, sort of declare over and over again how you intend to be different, or avoid thinking about what you've done, or possibly think about it constantly to the point where you can't even function because it's the only thing that's on your mind. Instead, the Michael Scott method is to not even acknowledge how cringy you used to be and simply show up differently. Still yourself, but an improved version of yourself. We recently talked about the concept of showing rather than telling in a different context, where I was talking about how in relationships, there's only so much you can do with communication. If you've already communicated your heart out to the other person and it's not really effective, that's the point at which you have to start showing people what you will and will not tolerate rather than just telling them. But I also think this metaphor really works in this situation where it's like, okay, I want people to know that I'm different, that I've changed. Should I tell them? Should I write an essay and, send it to all my friends and tell them, in 2026, I'm going gluten-free? That's not necessary. Just don't eat gluten in 2026. They'll catch on. Because at the end of the day, what matters isn't your words, it's your actions. It's the way you are embodying your values. And a lot of showing rather than telling is showing up as someone who's aligned with your values. If you are a person who, let's say, was just kind of self-centered in friendships and always talked about yourself, don't just tell your friends, hey, I'm really sorry, I'm gonna try to listen to you more in the future. The thing that actually matters is listening more in the future. So the next time you're having a conversation, they're venting about something, really get involved, really get in there, and don't just make it about yourself. Now, what if you did something that actually merits feeling embarrassed? Because you might be thinking, this Michael Scott example is great, Anna, but what I actually did did is so much worse than being silly in a sitcom. I'm going to walk you through exactly what to do with those feelings right after a word from today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is a platform that contains an incredible wealth of knowledge with classes taught by amazing, world-class creatives. It's designed to help you cultivate more creativity in your life. One thing that I've been wanting to do is change my intro clip to something just like a little snappier, because I don't want you guys to feel like bored or annoyed with my intro or like it's music. I know it can get kind of repetitive to always hear it. And I want to use Canva to redo my intro because I'm not very technologically savvy and it just makes things so much faster and easier. So I took this class, Canva Content Creation and Design for Beginners, and it went over a lot of the stuff that I otherwise wouldn't have known, like how to add elements to your Canva template and how to animate the design to ultimately turn it into a video. Skillshare has a lot of classes and categories that can help you if you're a business owner, if you're a creative entrepreneur, a writer, a digital artist, but also if you're just a person and you want to learn things like about productivity or like home and like gardening. The first 500 people to use my link in the description or scan the QR code on screen will get 1 month free trial using Skillshare. So get started today. So what do you do if you're mortified about something you did? And it's actually something more serious, not just, putting your foot in your mouth in an understandable way that is just going to kind of get swept under the rug in social interaction. Let's take a look at my favorite tool for dealing with emotions, the DBT emotion regulation flowchart. So in this way of dealing with emotions, you just need to ask yourself 2 simple questions. Number 1, does this emotion fit the facts? And number 2, is it effective to act upon? Whether an emotion fits the facts depends on what the emotion is. So the DBT manual and workbook contains handouts for every single emotion to kind of guide you through in what situations emotions fit the facts. But to give you a few examples, it fits the facts to feel sadness if there's something that you don't have that you want. It fits the facts to be angry if you have experienced some sort of injustice or somebody else has experienced an injustice. So that's the first question. And the second one is it effective to act upon? So if you do what your emotional urge is to do in that situation, is that going to turn out good for you or not so good for you? Let's give an example. Let's say that your entire office hears you calling your boss a bitch over Zoom when you thought you were muted. First of all, does this emotion fit the facts? Your emotions probably shame at that point, or maybe guilt, maybe embarrassed. Shame and guilt have very similar ways of being treated in DBT. Shame fits the facts if you violated your moral compass, if the behavior caused harm, if other people also view it negatively, and if you are responsible for what happened. So in this situation, you did violate your own moral compass because your moral compass is to be a kind person. You did cause harm because it hurt your boss's feelings. Other people are probably judging you, and you are responsible for it. So yes, this emotion fits the facts. So then you go down to, is acting on this emotion effective? Every emotion has what's called an emotion urge associated with it, which is just like your knee-jerk reaction of like what that emotion wants you to do. So in a lot of situations, anger, for example, a lot of our knee-jerk reaction is to fight, whether literally or, on an emotional level. For shame, the emotion urge is to hide, to over-apologize, and to avoid the situation. Shame just kind of makes us want to disappear. That's why it's so often associated with people literally making themselves disappear. And it also makes people very submissive. So you check in with your wise mind, which combines both emotion and reason. Is it effective to act on the emotion urge? No. Avoiding the problem and hiding is not going to help. It will not be effective if you just turn off your camera or hop off the Zoom call and never show up to work again. That's probably not the best solution. So if that's the case, then you do the opposite of your emotion urge, what's called the opposite action. The opposite of your emotion urge would be to immediately apologize, which is going to feel kind of like nails scratching against chalkboard because, of course, you don't want to bring more attention to what you did. Do it anyway. Immediately say, I apologize for that. I thought I was muted, but I shouldn't have said it under any circumstance. Now, are you still going to get fired? Yes, it's quite likely, but reacting like this is still going to be more effective than what your shame tells you to do. If your shame tells you to hide and never acknowledge it, you're most definitely going to get fired. If you instead react this way, there's a slight possibility that your boss might think, whatever, I've said things about my coworkers after hours, or like maybe I was being a little bit of a bitch. Obviously, this person doesn't like me, but they made an honest mistake and I'm not going to fire them unless it impacts their work. Let's give another example. Let's say that your coworker starts criticizing you in front of the whole office, tearing into your work, saying you used the wrong pen color for an important document or something. Does this emotion fit the facts? No, because you didn't actually do anything wrong. They're just being unfair because they dislike you. Is acting on the emotion urge effective? Cowering away is not the most effective strategy because it means your coworker is still going to win in the court of public appearances. So So instead, do the opposite of your instinct. Stand tall. Make confident eye contact. Calmly say, actually, Dwight, this is what happened. Or maybe some lightheartedness would work better too. Like, remember what I was saying about how Michael Scott made people laugh? Laughter is huge for dealing with embarrassment. If you are embarrassed about something and you make like a really big deal about it, that's gonna be so much worse than if you just treat it like something light. So maybe you want to say, all right, Dwight, understood. Next time I'll use the blue pen instead of the black. So here's where the Michael Scott method comes in again. Regardless of whether or not you did something that warrants feeling embarrassment or guilt or shame, and regardless of whether it's effective to act upon, there comes a point at which the Michael Scott method is really the only way you can move forward. Even if you did something awful. After you've made your apologies, after the initial days or weeks or months or maybe even years in which the consequences of that have impacted you, there will come a day in which you need to simply decide, this is a new season of my life. I'm going to show up as a slightly different, improved version of myself. I'm not going to tell people that I'm setting out with the intention to be different. I'm just going to show it through my everyday actions. So if you need to prove to your boss that you no longer think she's being a bitch, you don't do that by constantly just telling her. You do it by showing up as a very professional, no drama employee. You try to harness a genuine, intrinsic goodwill towards her. So when, for example, you're in the break room, when your coworker says something negative about her because they think that you're gonna like pitch in, you say, I think she means well. I didn't mean what I said in that Zoom meeting. And that way it starts to show. It's not just telling, it's showing through your actions that you've changed. And at some point, there's a chance that your boss might notice that. And she might be like, okay, yeah, like this person genuinely is showing up differently. Because that's the thing about telling people without following through with action, isn't it? There's a time and place for like apologizing, taking responsibility, saying like, I set the intention to not do this again. But ultimately, it's your actions that show whether that actually happened. Because there are a lot of people who are all talk, who will literally just say things like, I'm a girl's girl. I love other girls. And then they'll go steal someone's boyfriend. And it's like, girl, no, you're not a girl's girl. You were just saying that because you know deep down that you're the opposite, so you're trying to overcompensate for that. So show people how you've truly changed. Be lighthearted, make them laugh. You don't have to be a completely different person. Just show people a different facet of who you are. That is the Michael Scott method. Take care.
Tell me what you need.